The color went out of my brother's face, like somebody pulled a plug. Because every person standing at that grave who'd actually visited my father in his last year knew my question was true. They'd fed him. They'd watched Walt Cutter's hands turn to stone, one finger at a time. And they knew a man who can't hold a spoon doesn't sign his name to anything. But my brother wasn't performing for them. He was performing for the distant cousins, the old contacts, the folks who'd send a card but hadn't come around in years, the ones who didn't know. And I just planted a question in front of all of them that he could not answer. He thought our father left behind an estate, a house, some land, a shop full of tools, something you could take with a signature if you were bold enough to forge one. He forgot what our father actually left behind. And it was about to stand up out of that crowd, one gray head at a time, and bury him. But before I tell you how a dying man who couldn't hold a pen beat his own son from beyond the grave, settle in for a second. Welcome back to Patriarch's Revenge. Smash that like button and do me one thing. Drop a comment and tell me where in the world you're listening from. I want to see how far this one travels. And every name on that map is one more of us who's watched somebody try to steal what a good man left behind. Say hello to the others down there. This crew always shows up for each other. Subscribe and be one of us so you never miss a story. You found the right place. Now let me back up, because this is a story about what a man leaves behind, and it's not money. My name is Sam Cutter, and my brother stood up at our father's funeral in front of everyone Dad ever loved, and told a lie so big it took me a full minute to understand he'd actually said it. We were still at the graveside. Dirt not even settled. My father, Walt Cutter, 81 years old, in the ground maybe 20 minutes, and my younger brother, Dale, stepped up next to the headstone like he was about to give a toast, cleared his throat, held up a folder. Before everyone goes, Dale said, there's something you should all know. Dad and I talked near the end. He wanted things settled, and it's all right here, signed. Dad left everything to me. The house, the land, the shop, all of it. He knew Sam was set up fine, so he left it to the son who stayed. Pause, twos. The son who stayed. I want you to understand what those graveside strangers heard in that moment. They heard. The good brother, Dale, took care of Dad, and the other one, Sam, ran off, and so of course Dad cut him out. They looked at me with that soft, pitying look people give you when they think you've just been justly punished. And Dale stood there holding his folder, watching my face, waiting for me to crumble, waiting for the scene, the shouting, the grief-crazed brother making a fool of himself over a grave. I didn't give it to him. I let him finish. I let the whole thing hang there in the cemetery air, and then I asked him one question, quiet, just loud enough for the front row to hear. Dale, I said, Dad couldn't hold a pen for the last year of his life, so who held it for him? Pause, twos. The color went out of my brother's face, like somebody pulled a plug. Because everybody standing at that grave who'd actually visited my father in his last year knew that what I just said was true. They'd seen it. They'd fed him. They'd watched Walt Cutter's hands stop working, one finger at a time. Everybody except the people Dale had counted on not knowing. The distant cousins, the old business contacts, the folks who'd send a card but hadn't come around in years. Those were the people Dale was performing for. And I just planted a question in front of all of them that he could not answer. Let me back up, because this is a story about what a man leaves behind, and it's not money, it's people. And Dale never understood that, not until it buried him. Pause, 1/5s. My father had ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease. If you don't know it, here's the cruel little heart of it. It takes your body and leaves your mind, perfect and sharp and wide awake, watching from inside, while the machine you live in shuts down one system at a time. It started in his hands. That was the first thing to go. This was a man who built furniture, real furniture, dovetail joints, the kind that outlives the maker, and the disease came for his hands first, like it knew exactly what to take to hurt him most. By the last year, Dad couldn't hold a fork, couldn't hold a cup, sure as hell couldn't hold a pen. We fed him. We turned the pages of his books. Toward the end he talked through a little tablet that read letters off as he looked at them, slow and patient, because his voice went too. And his mind was Walt Cutter to the last hour. Cutting, funny, stubborn as a fence post. He knew everything that was happening around him, every single thing, including what Dale was up to. Pause, 1-5s. Now people are going to hear this and think I was the bad son. So let me tell you the truth of it, because the truth matters here. I didn't run off. I moved 3 states away for work 15 years back, and I called my father every Sunday of my life and flew home every chance I got. But Dale lived in town. Dale was the one who could drop by. And when Dad got sick, I did the thing you do. I sent money, a lot of it, every month, to cover the care, the equipment, the nurse. I trusted Dale to be there in the flesh because I couldn't be. And Dale let me believe he was. Here's what was actually happening that I only pieced together later. Dale wasn't taking care of Dad. Dale was managing Dad. There's a difference, and it's the whole difference in the world. Dale controlled who visited. Dale controlled the phone. Dale, toward the end, started telling people Dad was too tired for visitors today, turning folks away at the door, folks who'd known my father 50 years, because Dale wanted my father isolated. A man alone with one son is a lot easier to rewrite than a man surrounded by everyone who loves him. But Dale made one mistake, the mistake men like Dale always make. He forgot about the small people, the ones who don't count in his math, the nurse, the neighbor, the old friend, the people my father had been quietly good to for 50 years. Dale never thought about them at all. And that's exactly who my father left everything to, not in a will, in their hearts. He spent his whole life making deposits in people, and when the time came, every one of them paid out. Pause, 2s. Let me tell you about the nurse first, because the nurse is where Dale's whole story died. Her name was Grace Okonkwo, home health aide. She'd been with my father the last 14 months, 5 days a week. And my father, being my father, had treated Grace not like hired help, but like family. Asked about her kids, remembered their names. Had me wire a little extra at Christmas because he knew, even sick, that Grace was putting a daughter through nursing school. Grace loved my father, and Grace had watched, for 14 months, as Walt Cutter's hands turned to stone. So when Dale stood at that graveside waving a signed document dated 4 months before Dad died, a document with my father's signature on it, bold as you please, there was exactly one person who could say, with a professional's authority, precisely what that signature was worth. And she was standing right there, because I'd made sure of it. I'd called Grace the day Dad passed and asked her, please, to come to the funeral. Dale hadn't invited her. Of course he hadn't. Pause, 1-5s. So there we all are at the grave. Dale's face is white. My question is hanging in the air. Who held the pen? And Dale does what a cornered man does. He recovers. He forces the smile back on. Come on, Sam. Dad had good days. He could sign his name. This is exactly what Dad said you'd do, make a scene, make it ugly. He warned me about this. Smooth, I'll give him that. Turning it back on me. Making me the villain in front of the strangers. And that's when Grace Okonkwo stepped forward. She didn't shout. She's not that kind. She just said in her clear, steady, professional voice, so everyone could hear. Mr. Cutter could not close his hand for the last 11 months of his life. I was his aide. I have my daily notes, every one signed and dated, that describe his condition. In February, which is when that document says it was signed, I was recording that he could no longer feed himself or hold a spoon. She looked at Dale, calm as still water. He could not have signed anything, not in February, not in his own hand. Pause, 2s. You could have heard a pin drop in that cemetery. Dale's mouth opened and nothing came out. Because you can call your brother a liar. Grief makes people crazy, folks understand that. But you cannot, standing over your father's grave, call a soft-spoken home health nurse a liar to her face while she's holding 14 months of dated medical notes. There's no version of that where you don't look like exactly what you are. But Grace wasn't even the end of it. She was just the first one to stand up. Because once one loyal person speaks, the rest find their spine. Pause, 1-5s. Next was Earl Dames, my father's oldest friend, 79 years old. The two of them had fished the same lake since Eisenhower. Earl had tried to visit Dad 4 times in the last 3 months. 4 times, Dale had turned him away at the door. Too tired today, Earl. Maybe next week. Earl stepped up next to Grace, leaning on his cane, and he looked at that folder in Dale's hand. "Let me see the witnesses on that," Earl said. "A will's got to have witnesses, don't it? Signed in front of somebody. Read me the names, Dale." Dale didn't move. "Read me the names, son," Earl said again, harder. And Dale, cornered, glanced down and mumbled 2 names. And Earl, God bless Earl, just started laughing. This dry, sad, disbelieving laugh. "One of those fellers moved to Arizona 2 years ago," Earl said to the crowd. "Buried his wife out there. Hasn't set foot in this state since. And the other one," Earl pointed his cane straight at a man near the back who'd gone very still. "Well, he's standing right there. Bill, you want to tell everybody when the last time was you witnessed Walt sign anything." The man at the back, Bill, looked like he wanted the ground to open up. He said, "Dale, I never signed as a witness to nothing. You told me you said it was a card for the funeral, a guest book. Pause, twos. And that was it. That was the moment the whole thing came apart in front of everyone. A forged signature on a man who couldn't hold a pen. A witness who lived in Arizona. A witness who'd been tricked into signing something he never read. And a nurse with 14 months of notes proving all of it. Dale hadn't just lied. He'd built his lie out of the very people my father had loved, and he'd assumed none of them would ever be in the same room to compare notes. But they were all in that room now, because I'd called them, everyone. And more than that, because my father had earned them. 50 years of being a decent man, and when his worst son tried to erase him, his decency stood up out of the crowd, one gray head at a time, and refused to let it happen. Pause, 1-5s. Now here's where a lot of stories would have me pull out my own document, my own lawyer, my own trump card. I didn't have one. That's the thing I want you to hear. I didn't beat Dale with a better piece of paper, because my father, back when he could still communicate through that little tablet, in the months before his hands and voice were fully gone, had done something smarter than any lawyer. He'd told people, out loud, on the record, in the way that actually matters. He told Grace plain one afternoon, "When I'm gone, the house and the shop get split even between my boys. Sam gets the tools. He's the only one who'll actually use them." He told Earl the same, fishing, the last spring he was strong enough to sit at the water. "Even split, both my boys. I don't care what Dale said." He'd even told his doctor, and it was in the medical record, a note from a visit where Dad talked about his wishes and his fears, including, in his own dictated words, a fear that Dale will try to take it all when I'm gone. My father saw it coming. Saw his own son coming, from a mile off, with those sharp eyes the disease never touched. And he didn't fight it with money or lawyers, because he was too tired and too far gone for that. He fought it the way he'd lived. He planted the truth in the people he trusted. He scattered it wide, in a dozen good hearts, knowing that Dale could burn a piece of paper, but he could never burn all of them. And he was right. Pause, 1-5s. The estate got settled the honest way in the end. Didn't even take a courtroom, though I was ready for one. Once Dale's forge fell apart at the graveside in front of 40 witnesses, his own lawyer wanted nothing to do with it. Pushing a document that a nurse, a doctor's note, and a room full of neighbors would all testify was fake. That's not a case. That's a crime, and no lawyer wanted to write it down. Split even, just like Dad said, just like a dozen people heard him say it. The house sold, the money divided, and I took the tools, Dad's furniture tools, the ones his hands built a life with before that disease took them, and they're in my shop now. I use them. He was right about that, too. I'm the only one who ever would. Pause, 1-5s. Dale didn't go to prison. I want to be honest about that, because I know it's what you're waiting for. Forgery, fraud, it was all there, and I could have pushed it. Part of me wanted to. But my father was fresh in the ground, and I looked at my brother standing there in the wreckage of his own lie, exposed in front of every person whose good opinion he'd ever cared about, and I understood something. Prison would have been a mercy. Prison ends. What Dale got doesn't. Because here's what actually happened to Dale. He didn't lose the money. Well, he lost half of it, the half that was never his. What he really lost was every single one of those people. Grace won't speak to him. Earl won't speak to him. Bill, the tricked witness, tells the story at the diner to anyone who'll listen how Dale used him. The cousins went home and told their branches of the family. In a town that size, a man who forges his dead father's will over the grave doesn't get to be anybody anymore. He gets to be a story, a warning, a cut-a boy who did that awful thing at the funeral. Dale still lived in same town, surrounded every single day by people who know exactly what he is. That's his sentence, and it doesn't have a parole date. I go back now a few times a year. Sunday dinners, only there at Grace's house half the time, or Earl takes me out to the lake to fish the spot he and Dad fished for 60 years. These people became my family because they were my father's family, the real kind, not the kind you're born into, the kind you earn. Earl told me something the last time we were out on the water. He said, "Your daddy knew, Sam, knew what Dale was." He told me once near the end, tapping out letters on that little screen, took him 10 minutes to say it. Earl smiled, sad and warm. "You know what he spelled out," he said. "Dale thinks I'm leaving behind a house. I'm leaving behind people. Let's see him try to steal those." Pause, twos. That's the thing my brother never understood, right up to the end. He thought our father was an estate, a house, some land, a shop full of tools, something you could take with a signature if you were bold enough to forge one. But a good man doesn't leave behind a pile of things. He leaves behind everyone he was ever kind to. And when the time comes, they stand up. One by one, gray and slow and absolutely certain, they stand up and they tell the truth. Dale forged a signature. He couldn't forge 50 years of my father being loved. And in the end, that not the house, not the land, that's what buried him. Pause, 1/5s. If you've ever watched someone try to rewrite a good person after they were gone, try to steal the story of who they really were, tell me about it in the comments. And remember, things can be stolen with a signature. Loyalty can't. You earn that, and nobody can forge it. And that's where we'll leave it. Now I want to hear from you. What do you think? If you were in Sam's shoes, standing at your father's grave while your own brother waved a forged will, would you have kept quiet and let the truth stand up on its own like he did? Or torn that folder out of his hands right there? And here's the harder one. Sam had the forgery cold. Prison was on the table, and he chose to let his brother live in that town as a story instead. Was that the cruel punishment? Or should a man who forges his dead father's will over the grave answer for it in a courtroom? Head down to the comments and let's talk it out. This crew always has the best conversations. Take care of yourselves out there, and I'll see you in the next story.